Like
Well,
the coaching staff, I know what the coaching staff is, and I know the coaching staff doesn't know any better. I got it. you know, but it's just
no, like I think he's trying to make it seem like a reasonable move
I mean,
and
he's
like
doing it for
saying,
clicks, is what it is.
yeah,
But it's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. But it's
stupid take.
like, and yeah, but he's doing his business. But it just the trying to apply any sort of reasoning to this coaching staff, like it's like the whole put them on the fourth line so they learn nonsense. It's like, okay, that I I don't understand if like an actual physical leaderboard is the
Test,
way you
test, test.
motivate people.
Yeah,
Yep,
Can
can
you
hear
guys hear
you.
me? Okay, good.
yeah, we
Yeah,
can
we
hear
can hear
you.
you.
Hi.
I was
No, it's
hi.
hi. No, I think this coaching staff just flails around, and anyone who's trying to be like
Yeah,
team positive and make sense of the flailing, they're gonna say stuff like this. They're gonna like, oh, the player hasn't earned the coach's trust, and like nonsense like that. And it's
yeah.
just like you know what? Don't shift him in defensive situations if you don't trust him there.
Well, it's just this is just a stupid. It's a stupid defensive. And yeah, anyone. I think your core point is correct. Is that at this point, like this Oregon coaching staff is taking the wrong approach, and you can justify their approach all you want. That doesn't make it the correct approach. Like it's just fucking
But what if
stupid.
you
Sorry.
don't know any better?
No, but that's what no, but we're no, we're talking. I was before you hopped on. I was talking about Shang's
No, I
article
know.
on Ryan Merkley. Yeah, which I've been saying about Ryan Merkley for a while. Like he's still a liability, and they got to work that out. However, like his whole thing of like, this is why you can't play him. I'm like, no, at this point in the season,
This is why you
could
need to
see
be playing him.
Well, exactly. I could see you saying that at the beginning point in the season. Again, where it looked like the Sharks, might be in it, and he might need him. Fine, that's fine. But at this point, there's no fucking point. And the fact that the Sharks just aren't mathematically out yet is that's not a good enough reason to me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
Anyway,
like look. You can look at games this week. You can look at games for the last couple of weeks. The teams that are like trying to get themselves playoff ready, aka playing really chippy, like aggressive, dirty hockey. They're stomping us. Like people think they want
Well,
4 to 7 games of Myers boarding Merkley into the fucking walls. No, like this team would get destroyed.
I mean, the thing is
Yeah.
that we're also getting destroyed by those teams because we're very, very bad.
yeah,
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like people want to lock this team in a room with any of the playoff teams this year. Like they're insane. The West is soft, sure, but it's still going to be a brutal fucking playoffs.
I just think it's the defenders have to stop buying that the team is clinging on, because it's not the correct move. And I'm not saying the team should intentionally tank. It's not the same thing, but like, again, it's like
Well-
at this phase in the season.
How would we
players
spot
are
the
going to-
difference, by the way?
Well, no, but I'm no. Well, no. There's a significant difference to me between going out and everyone agreeing that they're going to lose, and going out and doing things that are advantageous for the future. And because those players are still going to try. Like you pop Ryan Merkley out there, or you pop John Leonard or whoever you want to pop out there. Those guys are not going to be trying. I think when people look for the tank, they're always looking for it to be like, why are you putting the effort in? And it's like, no, they're fucking players. They're going to put the effort in. Like a lot of their career still is contingent on some of the stuff that occurs during this time period.
Yeah.
But it's also a matter of like, in the first half of the season, when the Sharks, were looking like they were okay or maybe a bubble team, I understand being a little more cautious with the youth then. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. But at this phase, you are such a long shot to do anything that there is literally no advantage
Right.
to doing it this way. And I think that's why, like, when I see people sort of defending it, it's like, it's not that Merkley doesn't have a lot of issues. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with, but it's like, that still doesn't mean that benching him in this phase of the season is the correct thing to do.
Also, he doesn't have nearly as many flaws as people like to say he does. I'm just going to say.
Well,
he was
No,
the
but
he
no,
got
but
benched
he-
after being the third most responsible player for a goal going in. And that's fucking bullshit. That is not his fault. He did exactly what Brent Burns would have done in that situation, and then he got punished for it, which is
He did more than
fucking
that.
stupid.
But no, he did more than that.
No,
But
he didn't.
no, yes, he did. But that's the thing is that like he needs to be again. The Sharks are not making the playoffs, so he needs to be able to make that mistake. And you've been saying this all the long, Ben. He needs to be able to make those mistakes, and the coaching staff needs to be able to work with him to correct it, not just bench him. That's not solving the
I'm
issue
just saying,
for him.
you can't solve it when he did a thing that Brent Burns would do. He got punished for going starfish on a play.
Well, I mean that's the other issue which Shang didn't bring up at all, which is you are trying to, the coaches are clearly trying to mold his game towards like Carlson Burns.
Yeah.
And that's the type of player Carlson and Burns are.
Yeah.
Shang's argument being, well, they have more, they make up for it more often than not. Fine, I guess, but they also had to get there.
Right. Also, they don't, but that's fine. Shang's wrong.
And all,
Yeah.
and also, I would argue, we don't need another Carlson and Burns. We already have Carlson and Burns.
We need a fewer
actual-
Carlson or Burns.
I actually completely disagree with that perspective.
I would like an
myself.
actual defenseman. I would like an actual defenseman. That is what I would prefer.
No.
I'm not saying we couldn't use it, and I'm not saying he's not younger, so when they move on, he becomes. Not saying any of that, but having a shitload of offensive defensemen who are not going to play defense consistently is not an advantage. You don't need 50 of those guys. One, sure. Two, maybe. Three, that's half your defense.
I disagree. I think you want one of these guys on every pairing, paired with a guy who is defensively responsible.
Yeah, but we don't have the other side. Is my
That's
point. We're not
that's
developing
not
the other
Merkley's
side.
fucking fault.
No, I'm not saying it's Merkley's fault, but I'm
That's
saying
the organization's fault.
Yes, the organization continuously is trying to find Burns and Carlson over and over again, and it's like I understand. We need both. I agree with you, Ben. Anyway, let's do this podcast. What number? 183.
Yeah, we are number 183.
What are you chuckling about over there?
I just need to start the recording. I'm just laughing because we just did the podcast in like 3 minutes.
Well, no, this podcast will be more about Doug, I'm sure.
Oh, sure.
Let me know when you're going.
Oh, I'm good. We're recording.
Oh. Hello and welcome to Circling the Cup, San Jose Sharks podcast, episode number 183. Ooh, big changes afoot. Kind of at a weird time, but I guess, beggars can't really be choosers when it comes to organizational shifts. We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. I'm Alex. Here with me always is the Honorable Ben. What's up, Ben?
Bad Sharks hockey is what's up.
No. And, of course, back for the first time in a little bit, live via satellite, via Starlink. Thanks, Elon. Is our good friend. Well, you got to introduce yourself, I think, this time, bud.
Why is this some sort of like tax or something?
No, that's Colin, in case you forgot, guys. Hey, pretty big news this week with the San Jose Sharks. And I don't know how you would have missed it if you're a Sharks fan, but Doug Wilson has stepped down for health reasons. Obviously, we wish him the best in terms of recovery and stuff. Nothing has officially been said about what it is he's dealing with. But, for all of those people who are like, ding dong, the witch is dead, have a little bit of empathy there. Doug Wilson, I think the first thing we should do is maybe look back at his career, because it's, obviously one of the longer GM careers probably in sports, let alone the NHL. And, Doug has really, you can say what you want about him. You can say what you want about the some of the more recent situations that he has kind of put the Sharks in. But you're talking about a general manager who took a non-hockey market, which is, still not really a hockey market, but consistently iced really, really good teams and made a lot of really big franchise-altering moves, many of which were surprising sort of when they occurred, and really kept this team competitive for a long time. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of people that will point to the Stanley Cup record, and that's fair. Sharks do not have a Stanley Cup, but they were good for an exceptionally long time. And I think even when you look at, where the Sharks are now, a lot of where they are is due to trying to, hedge bets to get over that final hump. And it's not easy in the NHL to kind of get to that point, let alone be good for that long. And again, there's arguments to be made that maybe the Sharks shouldn't have been good for that long. You want more of that ebb and flow. But in this market, I think we've seen, there's not a lot of leeway for the business in terms of fans showing up and supporting. And, I think Doug needs to be commended for his work there. And I also think that Doug needs to be commended for the player-friendly culture that he brought to San Jose. Again, not necessarily on the contract side. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's not surprising that you are seeing a lot of players come out and talk about the personal touches that Doug Wilson did. Because I think if you go back again, we've mentioned this before, but if you look at the Dean Lombardi years, and I like Dean Lombardi. I really had nothing against Dean whatsoever. It was difficult to get players to come here and stay here. That shifted a bit under Doug, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way that he treated players and took care of players, again, not just financially, but the outreach that he would do continuously and the accessibility that he had to them. So that's not something you see from every GM. It's not necessarily something that's super normal. It's not abnormal either. It just kind of depends. But when you're talking about a market like San Jose, which is very expensive, there's really rough travel and other things. To have a GM make this a destination to an extent for players, and to get players to want to stay here, minus Brian Campbell and stuff like that, it's not insignificant. So I just want to lay that out. I would not be shocked to see them make him, one of the first numbers they retire, because they still haven't retired a number yet, or at least put a banner up, because he did a lot of really good work here. And again, even though we didn't necessarily win a cup, it certainly was not for lack of effort and lack of putting together quite a few good rosters, and bringing in a couple of good coaches for a period of time, maybe not identifying when they expired. But all of those things were really what made the Sharks such a competitive team. And so, I don't know about you guys. I definitely thank him for the work. I also find this a little exciting, as I'm sure a lot of Sharks fans do too, because, we've been talking on this podcast about sort of being ready for that next phase. And there's obviously complications with contracts and stuff to kind of get to that next era of Sharks. But you can't really deny that swapping your general manager, especially after you've had one as long as the Sharks have had a consistent general manager, isn't going to usher in that era. And I think the thing that gets me excited, and I don't know how much you guys picked up on this, but in the interviews with Joe Will and everyone else, they seem pretty adamant to find someone outside of the organization to get a fresh set of eyes. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to at the end of the day. They could pick Ned Colletti, who's sitting there as a scout and has been a general manager on the baseball side for a while. But the fact of the matter is, they didn't jump first to just automatically bumping up Joe Will. Not that I've had any major issues with Joe Will so far, but you know what I mean? It's just like it sounds like they legitimately want to try to find a fresh set of eyes. Now, how they want to direct those fresh set of eyes, that's another thing. But I know for people like me and you, Ben, and Colin, who are ready for a coaching change, well, typically a general manager would like to bring in their own coach, so there might be opportunity there. But I don't know. What do you guys make of all this in terms of your feelings, your excitements, your reservations? Where are you two at?
They don't need to bring in someone from the outside to have a coaching change. I'm just saying, like they don't necessarily. They could just keep Will, and Will can say, you know what, as the new GM, we need a coaching change. That could happen.
Yeah, it could. I guess my point though is, we've talked about this all season as being kind of a problem with sort of the organization, at least from our viewpoint, which is them just sticking with what feels safe and familiar. Like even bringing our current coach back. We didn't have a problem with it at the time. Obviously, I think we were thinking something different was going to come of it, but a fresh set of eyes probably has a higher likelihood, especially when you look at the club's past actions the last couple of years, of really having a fresh set of eyes and properly evaluating.
Oh, I hope so. Like, I would love to see someone new come in and actually like change the sort of identity of how this org goes about things. But I'm saying the main thing I would like to see is coaching change, and
Right.
that change results in being more forward minded, less, take somebody who we thought was good a few years ago and hope they're still good.
I would like to think that the odds of that coaching change happening went up a couple of percentages. Now, the Sharks are saying the coach is currently still their guy, and they are also indicating that they hope to have things sorted out by the beginning of next season, which is not necessarily the greatest thing to hear when it comes to the offseason, and a pretty critical offseason for the Sharks. But, I think the Sharks seem committed to the current coaching staff for whatever reason they feel they need to. And if you get a new person running that ship, unless they could specifically hire someone who likes Bugner. They could also specifically hire someone and might try to micromanage as well. I mean, there's a million things that could go, I would say, wrong there. But, again, I feel like there's a higher likelihood that coaching shifts happens because you're going to want your own guy in there. You're going to want someone that you feel can do the job. And I'm sure they'll give, Boogs an interview. You know what I mean? But I don't necessarily know the body of work. Like throwing Shemek on a wing this week is super awe-inspiring for a new general manager. Ben, what about you? Where are you?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting that he's stepping away for health reasons, and this isn't going to be isn't publicly a referendum on the body of work, right?
Yeah.
Because some people have treated it like, oh, they're taking this opportunity to start fresh. And the communication of we're going to do an external and thorough GM search does of course support that idea that, hey, maybe the ownership has decided that this isn't working and this is a good time to manage things out and give Doug, rather than a firing with him being sick, give him sort of a graceful exit, right? One of the things you talked about, Alex, that I think is important and I think solidified the Sharks, at least as an organization that can bring in players from the outside, is it wasn't just Doug who had that open door policy. Right. You saw players, embrace that idea of let's make this a family. Let's, Jumbo picking guys up from the airport, right, to bring them into San Jose, sort of things. Like you saw the really important players here, I think, embrace that idea of this is more than just a team or an organization. Though there were certainly times in acquisitions I think Doug made that also hurt that. And honestly, I think that's the theme of Doug's tenure. I think ultimately Doug is a plus GM when everything is said and done. I don't think there's any other GM in the league who gets Jumbo in trade. And that really, I mean, you talk about the 14 years of success, that was Jumbo being a big part of this org alongside Marleau. But he had, he also had his negatives. He made, he ditched assets early on that he didn't need to for players who only stuck around for, 2 or 3 months and weren't particularly impactful. I think of Craig Rivet as a perfect example of that. He had this great thing early on where Jumbo and Marleau, it's like, hey, let's have these revolving 3-year contracts, right? We don't lock you, we don't spend too much, we don't, reward you for the past, etc. And when he got away from that, that's when we got into real trouble.
Right.
And then of course he tried to recreate the Jumbo trade with the Karlsson trade, and I know how Colin, for example, feels about that.
Really more the Tavares signing first, and then Plan B ended up being.
I mean, it is that, but I mean, also the problem there wasn't the trade, because he didn't really give up that much in trade for Karlsson. The problem was then the amount of money on the re-signing, right? And I'm still relatively positive on the re-signing, except then he undermined that by keeping coaches who couldn't, or promoting coaches that just couldn't figure out how to use the assets, right? That's probably overall Doug's biggest detraction, I think, is as loyal as he was to players, that had its plus and minuses, and then he just never had a quick trigger on anything.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
he got attached to people and things. So there's pluses to that, as you say, and then I think there are significant minuses to it too.
Yeah, I mean, every coach that he brought, the interesting thing is that every coach that he brought in, that at least as far as I can recall, it was the right idea for at least the first season or two. Be it Wilson McClellan, right, bringing basically over the sort of Detroit system, but we had the pieces for that to kind of make it work.
Yep.
But to your point, I mean, and it is a great point, is if anything, Doug would make the right move a lot of the time, but then would be slow to move on from that when it stopped working. And that's sort of, and then again, I think it's a really great point that I think we've made known. It's not like any fan doesn't know it, but like the reward contracts lately have been a little much. And then you combine that with sort of the lack of ability to let go of this roster that has familiar names that were quite good and that would have maybe gotten you over the hump, but now we're further away from that hump. I think like that's, again, like this is the area where I'm a little nervous, as any fan should be, because it's a lot of bad GMs. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but also I'm excited because we at this point, like, I don't want to do every podcast talking about the same three things over and over and over again. And this is going to be a big opportunity for our podcast. No, this is going to be a big opportunity for Sharks fans to, like, one, you're going to see shifts in staff, right? Like, one thing we've been complaining about a lot is sort of that AHL system and how it's being used. Hopefully this is an opportunity for that to change, because it wasn't going to otherwise.
No.
This is an opportunity to see the coaching staff potentially change. Again, to Colin's point, maybe it does, maybe it does, but more likely that it will than won't, just given that there's someone else. If it really is someone external coming with fresh eyes, they're going to reevaluate everything. And that also means good and bad things for players, depending on who you're a fan of. The one thing I do want to point out, though, that I kind of keep seeing around the net in terms of hockey things is there's this weird mantra. I guess it's not weird. It happens all the time, where there's just this idea of like, well, the Sharks, man, they're real handcuffs. Like, who'd want to go in there? Lots of people. It's a tremendous opportunity, and also. I would say, listen, I would say one thing. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the Sharks are in a great position in terms of contracts and salaries. Right. They're not. Anyone who says otherwise is out of their mind. That being said, as permanent as some of those seem like they might be, that doesn't mean they 100% are, right? So, for example, like, I made a big deal, especially in the early days in our podcast, about paying attention to no movement clauses and no trade clauses. Having a new general manager come in with a completely new vision for the team may shift some of that. And so there might be opportunities where, you might not be seeing it, or I could just be hopeful there. But just, the idea that, like, no one's going to want to come in and touch this team is a pretty bad take.
No, especially because the way I look at it is you're more likely to get the right guy if they are excited to come in and attack the problem, as opposed to inherit a winning team and just ride or die with it, right? Like, this is an opportunity to look. The whole GM search thing is here be dragons, right? Because most GMs are terrible. Most coaches are terrible. So statistically, the Sharks are likely to pick the wrong guy in both cases. I'm just going to throw that out there, right? But if they take an opportunity to really look at people who are working at the assistant GM level around the league, who are looking at hockey in a modern way, and they find one of those guys or girls, because there's a young woman who had an opportunity. I think it was maybe with Toronto, was a finalist. I don't remember which team it was back east. Anyway, the Locked On Sharks guys know who that person is, and I didn't know very much about them. If they find the right person who looks at this as an opportunity to try something better and to work through the problems and do some tough buyouts, etc., then that's great, because they're also likely to find the right coaching staff and the right scouts and the right system of evaluation and all that stuff. I guess what I want to throw in here is I'm actually surprised that they didn't just hand the keys to Will and Junior, because it sure looked like they were being groomed all along to be the next step. And you know, as friends of ours have happily mentioned in our chat and on my Twitter, this could all be bullshit. The whole external search. It could just be a way of you know, satisfying, you know, vocal people in the community or the press or what have you, that they did their best, and then at the end of the day, it's like, surprise, Joe Will was here. He was inside the house.
Yeah,
right?
I don't. Yeah, and you know, the thing that kind of concerned me about that, to be fair, is sort of when you read the articles about sort of, you know, Will and everyone is involved in the search, which is, you know, whatever, that's fine. But it also sounds like the idea is that Joe Will is staying on and as an assistant GM, which to me is a little bit like, I would like my GM to choose their assistant.
Yeah, what's the point?
But yeah, right. And then also just the idea that kept popping up that, you know, Hasso wants to win, you know, now, you know, and wants to be the one thing. And here's the thing. I mean, you know, Ben, you and I have been talking about this the last handful of podcasts.
Yeah.
It's little comments like that continue to make me wonder how much control some of these positions really have, or whether or not the organization is actually very heavy-handed in sort of, you know, micromanagement. Because again, like, I don't have an issue. I don't have any personal issues with Joe Will. I haven't really seen enough of him personally to make a hard call on my feelings with him. Same with Doug Jr. So these aren't slights on these guys, but the fact that they are being potentially capped, again, if that's really what's happening, just sort of tells me that the organization has an idea of exactly what it's doing, and that's where I get a little concerned, is that they're going to wind up picking a patsy, or they'll, you know, promote someone within. But I do feel like, and this is not based on anything logical, really, other than just reading the comments, I do feel like the Sharks at least want someone who has a slight counter look at the players, if only to confirm biases, you know what I mean, or something else. But like, you know, want to bring in someone to literally go, hey, like, yeah, no there, no there, okay there, you know what I mean,
right?
And I also think they understand that they are cap wise in a bind.
Yeah, I honestly think, like, my read on the whole thing, my overall sort of, this is what I think really happened, is I think Hasso has seen the product and is a smart guy and realizes that he's been fed a line of bullshit for a long time, and this is his opportunity to clean house. I think if Hasso really believes that this team can win now, you don't have an external coaching search. You have a graceful elevation of the people who have been supporting Doug in that strategy.
Yeah,
so I don't buy it. I don't fucking buy it. I think, you know, the reason we're hearing mostly it's, you know, oh, Hasso totally believes in this, is guys are desperately trying to find a way to hold on to their jobs as this all goes awry. And who do they talk to? The press. What does the press do? Repeat the shit they hear because they don't know any better. So
yeah,
I kind of like that take.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, honestly, that's the way that I feel too. Like, and that's why I'm. If I sound chipper, that's why I'm chipper. And again, it's not because I don't like these people, but it's just like I'm just ready for something different.
But I don't know that Hasso knows what the right move is.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So that's the real challenge. Is this could go again? Here be dragons. This could go real well for us as fans, or it could go real fucking bad. And statistically speaking, it is unfortunately much more likely that the wrong choice will be made in all of these paths. So
can I point one thing, and then Colin, I'll kick it over to you because I know you've got quite a lot to say.
Yep.
The thing that I don't love about the comments, and again, they're just comments, is the Sharks timeline for getting someone in. You know, I want them to do a proper full exhaustive search for GM. Not like they pretended to do with coach. Like I want them to do it properly. I also don't really want a GM coming in September, because at that point, we're going to wind up wasting a season, because it's going to be tough to make. First of all, you've got signings and other things you got to take care of in this offseason. You've got a draft coming up. You've got free agency. You've got to make a whole bunch of decisions on a couple of prospects in terms of coming up. You've got a coach situation. If the Sharks can't get someone in and have them start affecting the team in the offseason, that means they're not going to be affecting them until the beginning of the season. And what that probably means is a slower process. And I'm not saying, even if they came in the summer, it would necessarily be fast. But they're not going to really be in the position to make large moves at that point. And I would logically you would think, and if I were a GM, I would want to be in there sooner rather than later, evaluating stuff ASAP and starting to lay down the groundwork. Versus, again, you look at the age of a lot of our guys, we don't really have years to waste. So I'm not saying rush into it, but I do have some concern over the lackadaisical attitude with the timing, seemingly.
Well, you've got to and my last thought, and then Colin, please take this away. You've got to buy out Vlasic this summer. That move has to be made. So that's all I have to say. Colin, take us home.
I mean, we're kind of in another place in recent Sharks history where if they make one very obvious move and kind of the expected move, we know it's business as usual and oh God, please make it stop. Whereas if they actually bring in someone from the outside, then the whole we have to win now rhetoric kind of gets a gap in it, because you're bringing in a new GM, and as you guys have already said, that's a top-down move. So there's going to be changes up and down the organization.
We hope,
theoretically, yeah. So if they just bring up from within, if it's just Will that takes over, then we know it's business as usual. We know they're going to just keep trying to push the playoffs next year, and that's it's very undramatic, and it sucks because it feels like just more of the same. Bufner's going to stay, and then we get to find out if they buy out Vlasic, and if they don't do that, then we know that they have some weird belief that there isn't anything wrong with their defensive core or their offensive core, and that it's just a few more pieces. In which case, we're fully out in the woods, and the organization is just lost. And oh man, I really hope we get good at bringing in goalies, making them look really good, and then flipping them for good returns.
But we didn't even do that this time.
Well, to be fair, he got hurt. He got the worst.
Yeah, but he was back.
Time injury.
He was back, and they had offers. They had offers. They chose not to move Jones.
Well, I'm willing to bet they kept Reimer because they wanted too much for him.
I said Jones, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Reimer.
And well, I mean, you're brain from watching Sharks hockey. But him getting injured is probably they were probably saying, "Oh, give us something that would be more likely if he hadn't just taken an injury." And you can argue him getting injured is because he's getting played too much, because this coaching staff just runs anything that works into the ground. But it is what it is. So the only thing that feels certain to me is who's ever backstopping for this team is going to either look like utter dog shit or look amazing, because they're going to get so many opportunities to show their goalie chops.
I'm really interested to see what my mood changes by the second in terms of what I think the Sharks are actually going to be looking for in a general manager. Because I have moments where I think they're going to do something progressive, and they're going to pick someone that either is not from the NHL or is not currently in the NHL, even if they're hockey related. They're going to try to pick someone that is more of a numbers person or whatever, even though there's really no basis for me to feel that way, given how the Sharks seem to handle advanced stats and stuff like that. At the same time, there's this little voice in the back of my head that says, "Hey, Alex, they want to win now.
Yeah.
Winning now means you don't take that risk. That means you find someone who you think can win now immediately." And I get a little nervous about that because I think for me, look, I want to win now as much as the next person. I don't think the team is realistically
No,
there.
it's delusional.
I don't think they're necessary. I don't think they have to be as far off as some other people think, but I don't think they're right there right now. And again, if you're going to bring in that GM, let's say this is an exhaustive GM search. Let's say we take their comments literally about beginning of next season, then you're not in the position to do that. So that's when I get worried that they might pick someone who, again, to your point, Ben, right? The NHL is a sort of a nepotism league in a lot of ways. You just recycle the same coaches and general managers over and over again. I would personally like to see someone new. But if they're in win now mode, I'm curious as to whether or not that hampers that in any way.
Yep.
Especially if they plan on taking it slower. Again, only because the next year is going to basically have to be a long transitional year, and that GM doesn't really get their feet wet until probably the trade deadline at the earliest. Next offseason.
Well, there's the other thing that even like Wilson was an amazing opportunist GM.
Yep.
Like he saw opportunities and he jumped on them. He saw opportunities nobody saw. Like I like to think of, him spreading drama amongst the GMs just to like shake players loose. Like he did wizardry, but he was also very reactionary. Like he followed trends, and when something seemed to have been proven in the league and was established with like certain styles, certain players, he would then go and try to find that. And the league right now is kind of in a period of transition where a lot of the old guard from the early 2000s and even 2010, like up to 2010, they're aging out. And this younger brand of hockey, especially with rookies coming up watching Zegras, like the sport is changing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if we don't get somebody who is outside of this organization as it is now, we're going to be 5 years behind just because it's going to take the league that long to be like, this is the new proven tech. We need somebody who can come in, look at the trend and get ahead of that trend and be like, okay, we need to flip in a big way.
Yeah. So two things, sort of touching on that. One, this is why I do not want a player GM.
Yes, correct.
I don't have interest, and I do see some fans going. What's really funny is I see fans going Marleau, and I'm like, what? At any point in time has given you the idea that Marleau would make a good general manager? Not that I don't know if he would, but I'll tell you what, Jeremy Roenick thinks he's gutless. Pretty hard to be gutless and be a general manager. Whether or not I don't believe that personally, but like still, like there's no evidence that players don't magically automatically.
I have to know, Alex, what absolutely brain dead people would be like, Patrick Marleau is GM candidate material. Like
I don't know.
Name names, damn it.
I'm just telling you, random fans of the internet, which I know is not a good, temperature. But you do see a lot of fans go, a player like Dan Boyle.
Dan Boyle is one I've heard, and it's like, I mean,
man.
I don't think
think
it's what the Sharks need. I don't think it's what the Sharks need. And the reason I say that specifically is to draft off of Colin's point. Yeah. Because the game has changed, and while some of the players on the ice might be able to recognize some of those changes, sure, I feel like I don't feel like that's the way to go.
A lot of players still think fighting matters, right?
Yeah.
That shows you they're not the right material for this shit.
Yeah.
So
the other thing I want to point out too is that, for those who don't think so, assuming Doug Wilson gets healthy, he will be a GM again. And I would not be shocked. He's spending most of his time in Arizona these days because I guess he has a second home there. I would not be shocked to see something like that occur. I do want to remind people that despite the fact that we didn't win a cup, to your point earlier, Ben, Doug Wilson was a pretty good general manager for the most part, especially comparatively speaking. So if he can get healthy and if he chooses to, he will. I don't think he'll have any problem finding another role.
Just a
organization.
reminder in that point, like winning a cup is not just a factor of having the best team. It's
Right.
having a factor. It's a factor of also getting extremely lucky, because 7-game series are not nearly long enough in hockey to actually determine what the better team is. And,
Well, that's the thing is,
and the Sharks had the best team in the league
yeah,
once
right.
in that time period under McClellan, right? Like President's Trophy, that good, right? So, and then of course the Sharks did make a Stanley Cup final and were unlucky enough to run into another very good team and have Hurdle hurt during that series. So, you know, that series with some luck could have gone the Sharks' way. It's not Wilson's fault. I mean, he did.
No.
I think ultimately he made some moves that hurt the Sharks in their attempts to win playoff series, but the Sharks made the playoffs 14 years in a row and were among the best teams in the league that entire time. And
Yeah.
that
he
is
certainly put
very
together,
hard to do.
yes, he certainly put together enough potential cup rosters. He certainly did everything in his power to get us over that hump.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it could be the coaches let him down. It could be injuries let him down.
Yep.
It could be just running into a better team, hotter at the moment.
Yep.
You know,
Bad luck.
I don't think anyone could fairly say that he didn't give the Sharks every possible chance to win a cup.
Completely agree. Now, I think that over the last 5 years, he's made some of his biggest mistakes, and in that sense, more than anything else, this you know, you say you're excited, and I am too, because I don't think Wilson and his crew have ever been prepared to actually do this whatever correctly.
Yeah.
And this gives us at least an opportunity to bring in somebody who might try something that needs to be done. So.
Yeah, I just feel like, and again, this is totally fair. This is an insanely long tenure for a general manager, but I just feel like for every great idea that Wilson had, he's at the point now where he's kind of out of them, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And you know, you also got to keep in mind that he's been looking at the same, you know, roster and players. It's not, you know, when you're general manager. Now that I've been a general manager of a hockey team, maybe a virtual one. When you're a general manager of a hockey team, it's not particularly easy to completely overhaul a team.
Right.
You know, once you've been building with them for a while. Yeah. But not even contract wise. Like, so you spent years and years and years drafting and trying to develop and whatever. It's pretty difficult. I mean, that's why you see owners fire GMs and bring new GMs in, to literally have the person come in and go, you now have no attachments to any of these people.
Yeah.
It should, in theory, be easier for you to say, hey, Carlson, we're going to get you out of here, and you're going to agree to it. And I'm using that as a random example, but it's a lot harder, I think, for someone like in Doug's position, you know, to even look at, like, let's take Hurdle, right? Probably really difficult for someone in Doug's position to not have some form of emotional attachment
Did I lose you guys?
to Hurdle in the same way to his fans. You know what I mean?
I love how you go from Carlson, where I'm like, ooh, yeah, let's do that, to being like, the new GM has to come into the Sharks and shoot the puppy.
No, but but my point is that I think when you've watched these players grow, and especially with the relationships again that Doug Wilson has had with these players, which is exceptional. It's harder at that point, and it's harder for you to turn to your boss and go, you know what, I was wrong about a lot of this stuff. Let me get a clean start. So this is the opportunity for that to occur. I don't think it was going to occur otherwise. And to Ben's point, I don't think, not even necessarily because Doug maybe didn't have ideas. I don't really know, but I think he's just too deeply ingrained at this point to be able to objectively do that.
Well, we opened up talking about, Doug was all about the personal connection to these guys. Imagine, you know, though it is interesting to think about it that way, because he also made some pretty ruthless moves early on, like moving Setaguchi literally the day after signing him to a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
I think that Doug, receded over time.
Yeah.
Right? I think what we see now is that this Doug has leaned a little bit too much towards those personal relationships and with players and coaches and staff, etc., and just wasn't prepared to do it anymore.
Yeah, but I think he believes in them, and I think that's the thing, is that, you know, when you're too close to it, you know, it's sort of like take like a friend of yours or a kid or whatever, right? I'm not saying you should dump on your kids or anything like that, but like, through thick and thin, you develop a relationship at a point that through thick and thin, like you believe in that person and that person's ability to rise up and do it, even if they may not necessarily have it in them anymore or be capable of it, or who knows. And I think that's the trick with, where Doug was, I guess, towards the end of this tenure, was in that position where it's like, he believes in all of these guys. You want your GM to believe in your guys, and that's really good. The reality is some of these guys aren't really performing up to that level. And if they can, the Sharks haven't figured out how to get them to do it. Yeah. And at that point, you need to be able to emotionally cut the tie and go, hey, look, man, I still believe in you. Take an opportunity over there. I feel like he's done that a little bit, which is great. Like Cogliano trade and stuff like that, where he's had a couple of vets where he's been like, hey, or even the Marlowe and Jumbo situations, I think towards the end, where he was like, look, love to have you back. Believe in you, but you can go elsewhere for a year.
I don't believe in you. $3 million a year.
yeah. But you know what I mean? Like there aren't a lot of, and I'm not saying it's a good thing necessarily, but there are not a lot of GMs that would be like, hey, listen, open door for you to come back. I believe in you. Go do what you do. Whatever. And that's it's another one of those things where when you become too close to it, it becomes very difficult to break away. And that's why, again, I really, really hope. And again, this is nothing against Doug Jr.'s, nothing against Joe Will, but I really hope that the Sharks have someone with completely fresh eyes come in and just overhaul. And as scary as that can be, because again, there are a lot of bad GMs, I don't feel like we can keep pushing this square peg into a round hole.
No, you're right.
And get to where we need to be.
The one thing I want to add to that caveat too is, you could bring in somebody who looks like they're going to be potentially a much better GM too, who's at a lower level, and also find out that, well, it turns out they're a really great AGM and they're just not cut out for this role. So there's a lot of different ways this can go wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry to be the Debbie Downer here, guys.
But you know what?
Y'all.
No. But I don't think it's a downer, because here's the thing: if you're a Sharks fan and you're a dedicated enough Sharks fan to be listening to this podcast or following another podcast,
what's wrong with you? First of all,
well, no. Here's the thing. I guarantee every fan in that position is just ready for something new, and that is what you are hopefully going to get. Might not be good. Might not be bad, but it will be hopefully different. And, the Sharks haven't, as fans, and again, I'm not complaining about this, because I think the Sharks had a really great run, and I was excited for a really long time. But we as Sharks fans have not had different in a long-ass time. Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting period. It's going to be an exciting period. I'm sure it will be a roller coaster of a period. I personally, my arms are wide open. You can't see me right now, but I'm ready to embrace it. And again, I thank Doug, and I thank everyone who did all that they did. I think the Sharks accomplished a lot, even if they didn't accomplish the ultimate goal. I thank them for their service. Ready just to see a different take.
Yep.
This is why we need Alex for the optimism. Otherwise, it would just be me and Ben going, it's all doom.
I'm not saying it's all doom.
I don't think Ben is necessarily pessimistic about this. I think he's just fairly pointing out that it doesn't magically mean that the Sharks problems will be solved.
I'm trying to manage expectations. That's my job. That's what I do here.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and one of the things that stuck out for me this week's games is that some of our players were actually, playing differently. It was nice. But the thing is, this doesn't make the Sharks any worse in the next year. They could bring in anybody, and that person could just sit on their hands, and this team is not going to be significantly worse next year. So
I would
in
like
the short term we're fairly stable.
I would like to believe that if they're external, that anyone who would take this job would have some firm ideas on how they want this club to be and would make some pretty significant changes. I mean, because I think, the nice thing about the Sharks one of the things that makes it an attractive place for, I think, a general manager is, first of all, the staff and everyone. The owner obviously takes things seriously. He puts in the money, which you can't say about every single owner. He likes to be involved, which is, fine. But the Sharks are a team, even now that they have some, undesirable contracts, right? And I don't want to make light of it. Like, it's going to be tough for whoever comes in. They also have some bright spots there right now. You know what I mean? Like, you've got, you got to reset, you got to, sign him again, but you've got Meyer, right? You've got her. You have pieces that you can realistically start to build around relatively quickly, assuming you can figure out some of that cap management. You also have guys, like Eklund. You've got, you had a bunch of guys in the in the college finals. You've got. I'm not saying they have the best prospect pool in the world, because I don't know that they do or don't really. But at the end of the day, they're not like. I don't feel like it's a team that a person wouldn't come in and immediately see opportunity with.
Yeah.
And I think that's a positive.
I mean, that's the thing about a GM search is they actually do need to essentially come in with a plan, right? If they're interviewing, they've got to talk, if they're going to get the job, they're going to be talking about, this is what I intend to do. And it's going to have to be fairly radical in a sense, right?
Yeah. Well, especially if they want to win now.
Yeah. Well, and that's just if somebody comes in and says we can win now, that person should not win the GM job.
Yeah, I agree. If they say I think we can get us back there in 2 to 3 years, and then consistently be a contender from that point on, if not, win, thumbs up. Anyone who comes in and goes, next year, baby, you're out.
Yeah,
you're out.
Exactly.
Hey, we had a couple of games here this week. We're going to breeze through these guys. Sharks would take on the Oilers. Kane! I had someone write me and go, Kane's doing well. And I was like, yeah, we said he would do well. I'm not. Whereas Kane is actually, believe it or not, folks,
a good hockey player.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with his hockey play. Well, actually, let me say this. It had nothing to do with his hockey playing ability after he stopped making stupid decisions in terms of picking fights on the ice and, things that would get him sometimes unfairly, but mostly, he needed to know better, suspended. Yes, he's good. Now, the question is, how long does Edmonton choose to ride that before the negative side comes out? But in this game, lone Sharks goal from Tomas Hertl. The Sharks did lose this in overtime. This is one of those areas this week that made me really want to flip over my desk, because there were people sort of trying to explain the decision to have Nieto on the ice for the overtime.
Oh God.
And here's the thing. You can justify that in a million ways, does not make it right at all. And the logic with it that I don't really understand came around from, how do you contain Connor McDavid? And listen, I'm not trying to sound defeatist here. I would argue you're not going to, especially not with this roster.
And not with Matt Nieto either.
So what you should really be trying to do is race to outscore him.
Yeah,
that's what I would be doing. Not putting Nieto, and not with Nieto specifically. So the Sharks lose. I will say that the play that won the game for the Oilers, hell of a play by Smith. Excellent read and pass. And the second that pass was completed, you were like, well, I guess I'm going to go to bed. Do you guys have any thoughts on this game at all?
I hated the narrative in this game of like, look how well the Sharks are doing with this playoff team. Like, Edmonton is like blazing a trail to the cup this year. No, I
think people are taking that take. Well, I know they're taking that take because looking for any positive, obviously. The Sharks are on and off performing reasonably well against good teams. But at the end of the day, you got to point to the scoreboard. Like, you can't keep piling up the losses and go, well, we played a hell of a game. At some point, that has to translate into wins.
I don't want it to translate to wins. I'm actually perfectly happy with the Sharks playing losing.
I'm just saying that, like, after a while, you go, yes, I understand. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this game was kind of a mess anyways, but yeah, like, the Sharks played okay. I'm happy they lost. Here, let's go drafting. So next game.
Yeah, next game. All right. Well, the Sharks would play another good team. They play the Calgary Flames. Oof, they would lose this one, as I think you would expect. Goals from the Sharks from Nick Bonino and Logan Couture. One thing that gets me really nervous about these last couple of games in the season, and I can't remember if it happened in this one. I know it certainly happened in the last one and the one before, is I feel like the Sharks are just kind of made of glass. And I kind of get real nervous when we put anyone on the ice at this point, because I just feel like these things are, we got a lot of fragile players for whatever reason.
Well, we also have a bunch of players who are running around trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing at any given moment. Like, the team doesn't play with structure or plans, so you have players head down trying to either find a puck they weren't expecting or just getting caught between plays. And sure, like, some of this is you need to play the young guys because they need to learn how to keep their head up. And some of this is just confusion on the ice, and that puts people at risk. So it's hard to watch, but it's also really frustrating because we don't play with structure. We don't defend in ways that help us. And
let me take a 2-second departure from the games, because I want to ask you guys a question, because we haven't had a chance to talk about it very much. But what do you think of our new goaltender acquisition so far?
Kakkonen?
Yeah. Just curious.
Colin?
I mean, my bar is better than Jones, so better than Jones so far.
Yeah, Colin, can you do me a favor and get rid of that bar, because that's the kind of bar that leads to Shemek being a winger.
Oh no, we'll talk about that. I would have liked to see. I think him and Reimer is a decent AB combination for a season, but I still feel for Sharks hockey the sample size is a little low, and let's face it, he's getting lit up. He's going to get lit up, and he seems to be a little full of holes up high when he goes down. So it's, I don't know. He's better than.
Are we
Jones.
talking about hockey?
That was actually the scouting report on him too. Prior to that trade, was that he needed to work on stuff, especially glove side.
Yeah.
But Ben, I'm just curious your small sample size thoughts.
Yeah.
Again, small sample size, understood. But
I'm
just,
not I'm not encouraged, but I'm also not discouraged, because it's a pretty small sample size, and we knew what his flaws were, and we've seen those flaws, right? So I think it's fair to give the Sharks coaching staff a little bit of time to work with him. And it's, during a season is tough, right? Because you don't have nearly as much practice time to do that, particularly West Coast teams that have to do weird fucking travel. So I'm waiting to see how he looks after a camp.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. This is my follow-up question, which I'm sure you saw coming.
Oh no, did I? Probably not.
Let's take the mystery. Sharks bring in a new goaltender because we can't predict who they would bring in here. Let's just say that the Sharks were to stick with 2 of their 3 current goalies.
Yeah.
Based off of what you've seen from Hill before injuries, and based off of the small sample size you're seeing from Kakkonen, and based on what you know for Reimer.
Yeah. Who
would you roll with?
I would roll with Hill, and with Kakkonen as the backup, and trade Reimer for value. Because this is not a win now team.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more times, we kind of have to put that perspective out there, but that's the key, right? Is that Reimer is a goalie that you use if you are delusionally going for the playoffs. And he's an asset you move if you understand that it is time to do something different.
Yeah. So. Yeah, understood. Yeah, I would agree for the most part. Well, I mean, I think I think they should have traded Hill at the trade deadline, right? So obviously, I think you need to get value
Hill?
for him.
No, I traded.
I'm sorry, Reimer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
They should have traded him while that was as high as they could possibly have gone. I'm not sold on Hill at all.
No.
Even the sample size that we had seen with him, I saw less convincing. I think of these 2 goals. I think of Kakkonen and Hill. And again, I'm small sample size of Kokkinen. This is just, initial impressions, but I've had we've obviously had a bit of a longer look at Hill. I feel like Kokkinen has it more potentially than Hill. Now, obviously, Hill's been injured.
I've kind of felt the other way, but again, I don't think we've seen enough of Kokkinen. I think we've seen enough of Hill to show that he has good enough games that if he can put it together and stay healthy.
I don't see him as a future. I don't see him as a potential future at all, though. I think at this point I would see him as a backup.
I mean, if you're riding with Hill and Kokkinen, you don't have a starter.
Well, yeah.
Until one of them sees
separate situation. Yeah.
So that's not really what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Like, if one of them puts it together, that's what you're hoping for, right?
Yes, of course.
Not that one of them will absolutely, is absolutely right now a starter. And I'll be honest, I think we've seen signs of Hill being able to do it if he can be healthy. We haven't seen that from Kokkinen. Again, I say give him a camp, give him some time, and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's my perspective.
All right, well, that's the sidebar for that one. We had one more game this week. This happened last night. This is the game we keep alluding to where Bob decided to put Shemek at wing, who, he first of all, he hadn't played wing since he was like 12, which is not a great sign. It's so funny. The logic here really is he's got spunk, but there's no room for him on the defensive side of the lineup. Let's try to put him at forward.
So fucking stupid.
My feeling, first of all, because that's based off of
Vegna
nothing.
and Milosh are garbage. So fucking figure that out.
But you know what the funniest thing? The funniest thing about that is, if he had done it with Burns, I would have said, yeah, okay. Burns we've obviously seen him play power forward. He was a forward. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Fine if you want to do that. You can't just take. Yeah, the Sharks had this problem for a long time where they would just think that every winger and center was interchangeable. And maybe it kind of depends because those are different. I know they're forwards, but those are different positions, especially within a system. Like, you cannot just grab any player except for putting Couture in goal. I think we can all admit he could probably handle that task. But you can't just throw anyone up there. And the funny thing about it is, why Shemek of all your defensive options to put up there?
Yeah.
Like, again, you want to throw Ryan Merkley up there, maybe? I can accept that. It's clear he wants to be an offensive defenseman. Yeah. Shemek isn't that guy. And the Sharks are having trouble scoring. So why are you putting a guy who isn't going to score goals in a wing position with no experience of it?
I have your answer.
Go.
Bob Boughner.
Trying to get fired.
Bob Boughner. Nope, he has brainworms.
Woof.
He has brainworms.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anyone defending that action, what baffled me about that move, aside from the move itself, was the timing of the move. If I'm a coach, okay? If I'm a coach, I'm coaching a team, they're struggling. Some of it is because of the roster, sure. Some of it is because of my decisions.
Yep.
For sure. And I know now all of a sudden a whole bunch of GM candidates are looking at everything with a microscope. I am not about to start Shemek at wing.
Well, no, that's the thing, though, right? Like, he's trying to figure out a way to invigorate the team, and he has no real good ideas.
Not the way to do it.
So what he's doing is what he can do, which is throw darts at a wall.
Shit at a wall,
and see if something sticks. Because that is the Boughner coaching method in a nutshell. Throw darts at a wall and see if something works.
So you're saying he didn't put Burns on wing because everyone saw that coming and therefore that wasn't a good idea?
I don't know, except I know he's a fucking moron and he wouldn't know a good idea if it fucking punched him in the face. So
I just don't. There's two things. There's two things that baffle me about this. Well, the mulling thing, but the two main things are, one, why Shemek?
Right.
And two, why Shemek? Why Shemek? Because but why Shemek? Because he's not exactly scoring now, and there's nothing that's indicated that is a position he knows how or can play at all.
I mean, even Milosh has a wrist shot, like.
and then two, Shemek isn't scoring anything. So. Yeah. Of all the guys you could have plucked from your defense, like if you came around and said, "Hey, Carlson," I would have been like, "Sure, try it. Let's just see what happens." I mean, I think we need to be a defenseman, but go ahead, whatever. We need some goals. Let's just, fine. Although obviously you're not going to do that because you're talking about fourth line, and you're not going to take minutes away from guys like Burns and Carlson, especially not our coach. But I just well, listen, guys, 3 stars of the week. And if anyone says Shemek on wing, you're out. You're off the podcast. Colin, you go first. 3 stars of the week.
I guess I'm gonna give third star to Hurdle just because he's still
The bright
manning,
spot.
It's the best line on the team and it's good to watch. Second star will go to actually I'm gonna give second star to Couture, even though he hasn't had an amazing week. Because I saw him genuinely try to pass to his line mates in ways that would help his line mates succeed. And I want to recognize that, bit of making his teammates better because, I've been hard on him about that. And I saw him trying, and that's nice. First star goes to Wilson's career because he did an outstanding job. And I loved his crazy like a fox moments. I didn't like his crazy moments, but the fox
His crazy like not a fox.
Yeah, his just straight out crazy moments. But still, he's given us tons of great Sharks hockey. So
yeah,
good for him.
Yeah, I'm gonna go next, Ben, if you don't mind, because you usually need a little more time to fight over who you're gonna pick here. I'm going to give my third star to Tomas Hertl. I don't think he continues to be one of the biggest bright spots on this roster. And again, I'm really excited now that we have a new GM coming in that will hopefully really make him even more the sort of the centerpiece for the next couple of seasons. Because I think that's just going to be refreshing for me as a Sharks fan. My second star is I'm going to put it towards Hasso Plattner here. I think mainly because. Look, whether or not we agree with each other on whether or not the Sharks can win now, I do like the fact, we don't see him very often. You do hear his name pop up occasionally, but it's times like these that you do kind of start to get some information from him. And again, it's really nice to have a general manager or to have a owner who cares about the team, who legitimately wants to win, who is willing to put up the cash to do it, and who isn't going to move the team out of the area at the first sign of a dip in ticket sales, because that's a big thing too. So I'm excited to see what decisions he and the org make, and that's why he's going to get my second star. My first star, obviously, again, I think, Colin, you nailed it. I think it has to go to Doug Wilson and all of the fine work he did here. Much in the same with how I feel about guys like Pavs and Jumbo and Marlowe not winning a cup here with us specifically. I feel that same pain with Doug Wilson because I really do think that despite some of the more recent deals and occasional follies, I think he was a really good GM. I was always really excited come trade deadline because you never knew whether or not he could make a big move out of left field. He obviously helped make this team a big definition and a destination. And I think that you can't look at where the Sharks are, both in terms of just the reputation in the NHL, but also in terms of the growth they've had in this area, the Bay Area. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't seem great now with ticket sales, and don't get me wrong, it's not like you walk around San Francisco and you see a lot of Sharks hats. It's very concentrated around San Jose and parts of the East Bay, but this is not a market that a team can really languish in for hockey, realistically, because it's not. There's so many other things to do. There aren't a lot of rinks here anymore. It's not a big hockey market. And the fact that the Sharks were able to be so good for so long is part of what helped really establish the fan base that they have. So hats off to Doug, and I hope he gets better. And I look forward to seeing him hopefully in the NHL again soon. And I can't wait to hear more stories about maybe our Sharks GM picking up the phone and having Wilson be on the other line with some bonkers wizard ideas. Ben, that leaves you 3 stars.
I'm going to go back to boycotting the 3 stars until Ukraine is free.
Jesus. Can't even give a star to Wilson. Can you? How about?
Yes,
how
all
about
3 stars to Comrade Doug Wilson.
Okay. Probably shouldn't call him comrade, but yeah, got it. All right, so Sharks got a couple. So right now, listen, Sharks haven't fared much better than they've been faring lately. They are sitting down at 7th in the Pacific Division with 67 points. Above them is Anaheim with 70, and then way above that is Vancouver up at 80. So it's a hell of a hill to climb. Seattle's down there. Boy, those guys screwed up. Sharks have a bunch of games this week, as you would expect, because the hockey season is still going on. They take on the Nashville Predators in Nashville on Wednesday. They take on the Chicago Blackhawks in Chicago on Thursday. And then on Saturday, they start a back-to-back. They take on the Dallas Stars at 5 o'clock in Dallas. And then they move on up to the other cousin team, the Minnesota Wild. That's Sunday. So a lot of games in a few days. They have a lot of games coming up, to be honest. I mean, next week is this upcoming week, those are the games I mentioned. The following week, it's every other day. And then after that, you've got another back-to-back in there. And then, hey, we are off into May, where I don't think the Sharks will really be playing, but it's going to be a fun offseason, folks. So stick around. I would not be shocked to see us pod a little more than usual in the offseason, just given the situation. But that concludes another episode of Sharks Hockey. You can check us out by subscribing to this podcast on Apple's podcast app or iTunes. And hey, give us a rating. It helps out, folks. Or pass it around to your friends. We love when you do that. It's so nice of you. You can, Android people, figure it out, or you could go to Spotify. You can check us out on the web at circlingthecup.com. You can check us, Ben, at Twitter at Circling the Cup, and of course, Facebook.com/circlingthecup, where really we just post the live streams and allow you to ask questions. But do ask questions. We get tired of talking about the same thing, and the season hasn't given us a lot to talk about. So, we'd love to do a question podcast. We also have that Discord server, which you can find somehow. Well, I can't remember how to find it, but it's there. And there's some great conversation that usually happens in there as well. Shout out to everyone who's in that. But yeah, write us in. We would love to see what your takes are about what the Sharks are doing right now and answer any questions we can with whatever information we do or want to make up. That's it for the week, guys. An era, a chapter of Sharks hockey is officially closing, and we're watching it happen. So say goodbye.
Best of health to Doug Wilson.
Yeah.
Are we cheering for Florida yet?
Bye-bye. I was cheering for Florida already.
I was going to say the same thing.
Cool.
Right.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
I'm so interested to see where they go. Yes, go.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, Ben.
Yeah, yes.
I saw you. I literally was in the store and almost bought that horse racing game for the boys. Is it good or no?
It's great.
Because I have Downforce, which the kids love.
Yeah. It's great. It's not really about the racing per se.
Yeah, it's about the betting.
It's about the sort of putting your money on horses and acquiring horses and manipulating the race through special actions and stuff.
Yeah, have you played Downforce?
No, I have not.
That's exactly how Downforce is. So I'm wondering if it's the same game. Okay, I'll go look it up.
It's fucking great. If you want to know more, there is a video review by a group called Shut Up and Sit Down. They're the best.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they're great.
So they did
I don't even board game that much, and I watch them because I find them entertaining.
Yeah, they did a review on this game. That's how I knew about it. So watch that review, and you'll get a sense of what it is.
As long as it's a little bit different from Downforce, sounds like it might be the same. Then I might go back and get it.
Does Downforce go to 8 players?